Welcome to the Recover You podcast with Kylene and Patrick Terhune. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome everyone to another episode of Recover You. I'm so excited. This is a special episode with Megan Barrett, and I'm really looking forward to introducing you to her today and to talk about how understanding your human design can actually help you communicate more effectively to others, including your partner, and how learning about your partner's human design can really dramatically improve the communication between the two of you. So human design is something that I've talked about very briefly a couple of times on the show. And I always sort of introduce it like, ooh, this is a little woo, like just bear with me. But I've kind of been wanting to share like how this, learning about this has really impacted my understanding of myself. And so I'm really excited to do a little bit of a deeper dive on it for anybody whose interest has been piqued in some of my past episodes. So let me introduce you to Megan. Megan is a master practitioner in NLP and quantum time technique and is working towards a certification in human design. One way she uses her gifts and talents is inside her coaching business with her clients. Megan's unique coaching approach combines subconscious reprogramming, human design, and her vast experience as an online business owner to move you forward in your life and business to reach your goals in a way that is aligned and fun for you. And I can attest to that because not only are we friends, we also went through a lot of the same certifications, except I did not pursue human design like you did, which is, I love learning this from you. And we've worked together in a couple different capacities. We were each other's partners for the training where I did subconscious reprogramming on you and you did it on me. And then we kind of learned about each other and kind of helped each other through some emotional blocks. And then you began working as a business coach, and I was like, this is perfect. She's human design. She does QTT and subconscious reprogramming, and I want to keep doing that for myself as I work on my business. And I was like, this is just awesome. So now we're working together in that capacity. So it's been great getting to know you and pick your brain. And you really make it fun because it's so personalized. And I think it really is an integration of that human design aspect where you get to learn like what your friends and your family and your clients, how they act and think and why, really what's underneath that, and then personalize your advice to them in that capacity. So yeah, it's just, I like you so much and I'm so glad we're friends.
Well, thank you so much, Kylene. Yeah. That was a great introduction. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I have listened to your podcast. I love your podcast and really just big fan of everything you're doing.
Thank you. Oh, and let's not forget to mention your podcast that wasn't in your bio. So just briefly mention that. It's brand new.
It is. It's a little baby. Yeah. So it's called the Redeeming Roots podcast. And it's just kind of where I'm sharing different parts and pieces of just everything I've learned, my own experience. I'm going to be interviewing other people, just really how it's time to really dig deeper. Like a lot of times people just don't even know, like, oh, this is a limiting belief that's causing me to act in this way, and just giving you really, hopefully, practical tips and tools and just helping you see the positive side of like what can be. I think a lot of times we get living in our own worlds of like, well, this just must be what my life is going to be like. And once you've kind of done some of this work and you see the other side, it's like, whoa, yeah, everybody needs to know this. So that's really what the podcast is there for.
Yeah, well, I have been listening and it is also amazing. So go check that out. And it is Redeeming Roots podcast, correct?
Yes, right. It's the Redeeming Roots podcast. It should be on all the players. If it's not, let me know.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get into communication and what this looks like because let me rewind. I'm going to correct my own self. Let's start before that. Let's talk about human design and what it is because, like I said, I've only briefly mentioned it. And I do think that there is a thought when people hear stuff like this, where if you hear the word chart or if you hear that in order to get your human design, you have to have your birthday and where you were born to get that information, that this is some sort of divination or future telling or something that on a spiritual level from a Christian perspective would not be acceptable or, just not be something you'd want to jump into. So as a Christian to a Christian who also uses human design, and we've kind of thought about this on ourselves and asked these questions, can you briefly just share what is it actually and your perspective on that from a faith-based background?
Absolutely. So my favorite definition of human design is that it's called the science of differentiation, which I just love that because it's just a way to see how you are different from people around you, how people around you are different than you. And when you think about communication, especially, just think how valuable that can be. Like, a lot of times we expect people to act just like us, or like, why aren't they doing this? Because I would do it like this, and we start to kind of make these comparisons. And it's like human design for me personally has really been valuable because I've been pulling up everybody's charts that I know and my friends and my family, I know all my family's charts, and it's like, wow, this is just eye-opening, and it's really helped my marriage. It's helped me be a better mom. And I totally get like the hesitation for something new. You're like, where'd this come from? What's going on? When I first pulled my chart, I was so like, oh, this is weird. This is, I don't know what these words are. This looks really funny. And I put it away for like a year or two, and then eventually picked it back up, and it was like, okay, I've heard a lot of people talking about it and how valuable and helpful it can be in relationships and your business and everything. And so I was just like, I had an open mind. It's like, I'm just going to like look at this and see how it feels and see, does this resonate with me? Does it not resonate with me? Like, is there contradictions with my faith? And really there are none. And it's beautiful because it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so seen. That's what most people say when I look at their charts and I tell them a few things. They're like, oh my gosh, like I have never felt so seen before. And you just seem to get me. And I'm like, yeah, I've known you for 5 minutes, but this is just like your design. Like it's a beautiful thing. And I think it's cool because human design often doesn't tell you anything new that you don't already know, because this is you. It's more like, for me at least, it gives me validation. Like, oh my gosh, like there's nothing wrong with me when I'm acting in this way. This is like how I was designed. And really it's my job to step into like the highest expression of this gift or trait or whatever. So that's kind of a brief overview of what human design is. We don't need to get into like all the science and everything behind it.
And just to clarify, if that question is kind of hanging out there, it's not future telling, it's not divination, it's nothing like that. It really is just an understanding of how God created you. And then we get to take that information and say, hey, there's strengths and weaknesses to this aspect of it. And so how can I learn about it in order to work on my weaknesses and focus on my strengths? And when you are coming at it from a relationship perspective, like we're going to talk about communication today, that can be incredibly helpful. And if you're talking about business, like your human design is going to impact the way you work and the way you think. And so trying to fit into the box that somebody else is creating is not always going to work because you have a different human design. And so I'll just kind of throw one of the biggest learnings for me that I have learned as a manifestor is that it's my job to inform. And so what I've noticed is that a lot of times I will be thinking about things or creating things or having ideas or like full processes like going on in my head in the background of my life. And nobody else knows that. Right. And it's like, well, hey, can't you mind read a little bit? Like, or I'm struggling with something and I just don't really want to tell anybody about it. And therefore, like nobody has any idea of what's going on in my life. Right. And now that might just seem like, oh, well, that's everybody. But as a manifestor, like there is an energetic component to it where if I'm not verbally communicating to people what my plans are, what my vision is, what my ideas are, then they're not going to know what that means. And so they're not going to know how to support me or to come on board or even how to communicate with me about what's going on in my life. And so it's just really helped me to recognize that even when it is, or even maybe mostly when it feels uncomfortable to me, that simple little action of communicating what's going on in my head and what's happening in my life is going to be beneficial for the relationships that I have and moving everything in my life forward.
Yeah, that's so true. And one other thing I want to mention about human design is that it's not going to give you like what's the word? Confirmation that you can act a certain way that isn't really the best way to act, like it's not a way to limit you, and it's not a way to like encourage you to be rude or
Excuse bad
something,
behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I see some people on social media, and they're like, oh, well, that's just my human design. And I just like to disagree with that, because there's, like Kylene said, there's a high expression and a low expression to every part of your chart. And I love the growth path, like really seeing, okay, I'm really like in this low expression of this right now. So how can I really take steps to be more in that high expression so that I can show up more authentically and really like love the people in my life. So yeah, just wanted to add that in. But yeah, it gives you tools and a system and language. So my husband and I use the language of human design quite a bit now, whereas like a year ago, we just didn't have that language. So it's really helpful in our communication and our marriage, and even seeing our kids kind of be like, oh, that's so interesting how they did that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. When you kind of understand like the general types, it really changes how you like, I've looked at my sister and her family, and I go, oh, all my nieces and nephews are these types and these human designs. I'm like, oh, this is going to be great understanding this, to watch them grow up, and have this different perspective of who they are and what their purposes are and their strengths and everything. So anyway, I'm excited about that. So let's get into communication. And I know that you are going to give us a broad understanding of what the different types are. So let's just pause for just a moment and say, everybody, if you do not have any idea what we're talking about, go to myhumandesign.com, put in your information, get your chart. You can download the app if you'd like to, and have it in front of you while you listen to this, so that anything that she says that is applicable to your particular type, you can make a little note on that, or resonate with it as it kind of comes up. But this will be really helpful if you can have your chart and maybe your spouse's chart in front of you. So just pause this for just a moment and do that, and then come right back. So Megan, tell us, what are the different types, and let's jump into how they can impact communication.
Yes. And one thing about getting your chart, you will want to know your birth date, where you were born, and the birth time. If you don't have your birth time, call up whoever has your birth certificate. If you don't have it, look at your birth certificate. You can call a hospital where you were born. Or if you just really have no way of knowing that, you can choose like noon. Okay. Just kind of choose a time during the day. Hopefully it's going to resonate with you. If it doesn't, you can always reach out to me on Instagram or something, and I can help you pull a few different times and really figure out which one's going to resonate the most with you. So yes, we are going to get into the types. So there's 5 different types in human design. There's manifestor, generator, manifesting generator, projector, and reflector. And so I was thinking we just go down the list of all of the different types and kind of one at a time really talk about a brief overview of what that type is, like how that type should, relate to the world and show up in the world. And then also, if you are that type versus if you're married to that type, really how you can support each other and just encourage you with which is this design that you have been given. So we'll start with manifestor. Manifestor is the type that's really here to start new things. They're here to like break new ground and really initiate things. Kylene is a manifestor. I am a manifestor. And I think one of the reasons we work so well together is because we both are just like, oh yeah, you start this. Okay, that's great. You'll start this. Like, let's do this. And it's really fun to like bounce just that initiating power off of each other. So manifestors are here to initiate. In order to do that in a way where people like come alongside you and really support you in what you're here to do, that's where that informing piece is so, so valuable that Kylene was mentioning. Informing is you just say out loud what you're doing. And for manifestors, sometimes that can be really hard because chances are a manifestor kid has been told they have to ask permission to do something, or they tried to just do something on their own, like they wanted to do it, and then they got in trouble for it or something. So manifestors have a lot of these wounds that like, oh, I don't want to tell people what I'm doing because then they might try and stop me from doing what I want to do.
That resonates. That resonates. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a big thing about, hey, don't, like, if this is a great idea and I want to move forward, like, please don't get in my way, right? Which I mean, I feel like saying that out loud, everybody can relate to that in one aspect or another, but it's such an interesting concept to think about that being part of your the way you're created. And like, we are just here to like create things. And so if something kind of inhibits that, it's going to feel really frustrating.
Exactly. And there's only a couple of the types that are really here to really just start something new, that really will feel supported in that initiating. Most of the types are actually here to like either wait for an invitation or wait and respond, or like just wait till that timing is right. So manifestors are unique in that way. And informing, it's just like one of those pieces of the puzzle that a lot of manifestors are like, I don't want to, like, I just don't want to say out loud what I want to do. But it's not about asking permission. It's really allowing people to come alongside. And I'll give a few examples of just shifting wording can really help. And I mean, in human design, we talk about the word conditioning or deconditioning. A lot of us have been conditioned to act a certain way, just like growing up in a household, and however your parents thought was the right way to act, you probably learned along the way that like, oh, if I act like this, then I get more love, something like that. So just keep that in mind, because we've all been conditioned to be different ways, but just hearing the different types and how you really are designed to act, there's a way to do this in a really powerful and loving way. So manifestors will have like a creation and rest cycle. So we really have this energy that comes through us. It's like, oh, I need to initiate this thing. We don't even always understand all the details at first. Like it can be like this, just like this urge to like, I have to do this. And maybe the details come along like as you start going. It's kind of taking a big leap of faith. And then afterwards, we really have a rest cycle where we have to like, okay, that was a lot that I just put out there. Now it's time to just really slow down and rest. I've heard the length of the rest cycle is proportional to the size of the thing that you've created. So if you're like, creating this huge thing, you may be like, I've heard of manifestors and rest cycles for a couple of years where it's like, they don't have any like huge urges for a while. If it's like, I'm initiating making dinner, that's different, right? You're not going to have to rest for a year. So if you are a manifestor, a few things that I want to say to you would be just to know that informing is not asking permission. When you inform, you'll be able to do the things you want easier, and to know that not everyone is designed to just do things. Like not everyone is designed to just like start this big project. Most of the types need, like I said, to respond or wait for an invitation. Kylene, anything you want to add to that? Because you are a manifestor.
I know.
Before I go into if you're married to one.
Yeah, the rest cycle is like the biggest, that was the most validating thing for me, I think, in learning about my human design. And I think I did mention this before on the podcast, because I mentioned how we sometimes we try to batch, right? To accommodate the fact that like, hey, if I'm like exhausted on the weekend or something and we can't do an episode, then we have the space to do that while still producing a consistent product for everybody. But it really validated, because I grew up in a house full of generators. Like literally everyone in my house, both of my parents and both of my sisters are generators. And you'll talk about that in a moment, but they are very go, 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 right? And so for somebody that had a different energetic cycle, I basically have always beat myself up in terms of, well, why can't I produce more? Why don't I have more energy? Why, when I do this big thing, like a concert or a launch or, whatever it is, do I get so fatigued and just like have to take a break, And I'm like constantly on this pursuit of like more energy, more production, right? Because that's like the ideal. It's like who I want to be, right? And so understanding that the way I have functioned most effectively is normal and actually good, and how I was created to be, and that I can not actually work against it, but with it to be the most productive and most impactful human that I can be on this planet in this life. That to me is so validating and gives me so much reassurance. So that was really cool for me to learn. I really liked that.
Yeah, I mean, I love that about human design. And that, like I said, it's not like you learn something new about yourself. It's more just like, oh my goodness, this is how I've been feeling. Like, of course, which is just so cool. So if you are married to a manifestor, I would say my biggest tip for communication is to make sure that you're not asking them to respond to you too much. So this is something my husband and I have talked about a lot. And, general conversation a lot of times is like, how are you doing? What are you doing? How's this thing going? And for a manifestor, a lot of times that like responding energy is really draining. So Kylene, I see your face. She's
my gosh. Yeah. Okay. It's like so much pressure. Okay. So my husband is trying to be so sweet and he will like ask me like, how's work going or how's the specific project that you're working on or whatever it is, right? Over the course of our relationship. And this is fascinating to me because there have been times where I am like, I don't want him to ask me these questions because to me that feels like pressure. It's so weird. And I'm like, he's just trying to be nice. Like he wants to be involved in my life, right? He wants to be supportive and he's doing such a good job. And here I am like, don't ask me that question.
Yeah. And I think for manifestors, we feel that pressure and that pressure to like respond and like it's the same kind of idea you were saying, like keep up with people, like people want to know. So I have to tell them. And really, so I would have, instead of asking, if you're married to a manifestor, instead of asking like, how's that project at work going? You can just make like a simple word shift and say, whenever you're ready, I would love to hear about that project at work. And that feels so different. It's like, it's putting the ball in your court. If you're like, I'm not ready to talk about that right now, but now I know they are ready. Like they want to know. So that's communicating. I love you. I want to hear from you when you're ready, right? It really just puts the ball in the manifestor's court, which is really amazing for speaking from a manifestor's position perspective. Yeah.
That's amazing.
For energy purposes, really allowing them to rest when they need it. And if you find that they're doing things like not telling you and you're like, why aren't you telling me what you're doing? It's likely because they don't feel like they trust that they're going to be able to do it if they talk about it. Like they're like sneaking the chocolate chips in the kitchen. It's like, well, I don't want anybody to know because I really want a chocolate chip and I don't want to tell anybody, right? Like it's a lot of this like manifestor conditioning from when they're a kid and they want to do something and somebody told them no. And then like, so manifestors, I don't think I mentioned this, but manifestors, when they're feeling really aligned and good, they're going to feel peace is that signature emotion. And when they're out of alignment, they're going to feel anger. So each of the types has a different like emotional pair there. And that anger can come if you're a manifestor or if you're married to a manifestor and you notice they're like really angry or like resentful. A lot of times it's because they're not informing. Like, honestly, that's most of the time what's happening. If you just say, even for a manifestor, informing, it doesn't have to be, does anyone want to go to the store with me? Or like letting someone else like, can I go to the store right now? Versus like, I'm going to the store in 5 minutes. And letting if anybody else is like, I want to come, great, you can come, whatever. But just stating it as, this is what I'm doing. Whoever wants to come along is going to come along. And that's true in business. That's true in life. But it's not just like, I'm starting this thing and people can come along if they want to come along.
You're invited.
Yeah, you're invited. And I'm just telling you what I'm doing, right? Cool. Okay, we can move on to generators. If you're ready, unless you have anything you want to say about manifestors.
I think that's real. It's so much of that resonates with me. Yeah.
Okay. So generators are here to really work hard at the things that they love. So their strategy is, manifestors are to initiate. Generators are here really to respond. So they can respond to ideas. They can respond to other people. They have that energy to really respond. They feel satisfaction. That's that signature emotion that they have when things are really in alignment for them and they're following that strategy. And their authority, which we won't talk in detail about today, but that's really the way you make decisions. And if they're really out of alignment, they're going to feel frustrated. So they have satisfaction versus frustration. If you are a generator, know that you may have more consistent energy than your partner or your kids. Okay, generators really have this like battery inside of them that refills with things that they love doing. So that's why I said you're really here to do things that you love to do. If you're working at a job that you just despise, you're not going to feel that energy and you're going to get drained. You're going to burn out. It's really important for you. Even if you have a job you're not totally loving right now, find something in the evenings that you can do that really is going to fill up that tank for you. The generator types, which includes the next type, we'll talk about manifesting generators. So generators and manifesting generators together are about 70% of the population. So it's a pretty big chunk of people. And so that kind of makes it easy to feel like everybody's like me. Everybody has this energy to like go, go, go. That's not true. And it's important to just acknowledge there may be people around you in your life that don't have that consistent energy, and just kind of having an open mind about it's okay, and not pressuring people to have that energy. So if you're married to a generator, my husband is a generator. So if you're married to a generator, I have a lot of experience here. So encourage them to find ways to have fun and enjoy, like I said, enjoy something in their day, even if it's a little something after a really hard day. If they're working on a project they really don't want to be doing, like make sure they have like kind of like a reward at the end of the day. Okay, you get to do this, I know you love doing this. That's great. They are going to be best in alignment when they're responding to things. So responding to ideas, responding to you. They're not necessarily the initiators. Like we talked about, the manifestors are those initiators. And while they can initiate, it doesn't just come easily to them. So there's a lot of women who are like, I just wish that my husband would spontaneously take me out to dinner or something, right? Like for a generator, that's not going to be necessarily something they just do, right? That's initiating this new idea. It might not even be in their awareness. Whereas if you plant the seed, right? Communication, you say, I'd really love to go to dinner. I'd love for you to plan it. That's like you're giving him something to respond to. Okay. So you can use these tools in a way that really allows it to feel good to do it, right? Instead of like, why don't you ever take me to dinner? It's like, hey, I'd really love for you to do this. It'd mean a lot to me. You're really communicating with love. And it's just such a different energy in that conversation.
That's really interesting because I'm thinking about a particular relationship in my life where when I started understanding human design, I was like, oh, maybe I should have invited them, or in my case, like informing them of what I'm, thinking or feeling or whatever, so that the response would be a little bit different. So that's really fascinating to kind of know. Generators like need that invitation. It's not that they don't want to spend time with you, or it's not that even that they don't want to support you or whatever it is that you're talking about. But they almost need like that door to be open, like maybe even particularly with or in relationship to a manifestor because of our closed door, which I know you didn't mention, but because they can't read you, right? So that is kind of a really big aha moment of like the relationship between manifestors and generators, like making sure that you are creating that invitation so that they can then respond.
And it doesn't even have to be an invitation. It can be like, you leave some dinner menus out and say, hey, choose one, like you're saying, go ahead, respond to whatever you like, you're letting them kind of figure out what feels good to them. Cause there can be a lot of, like I said, you don't want to force them to do something that they don't want to do. Okay. That's like the worst for a generator. And also like being careful not to force them to finish everything that they start. Like, generators are really here to be really great at what they do. They work hard at it and they do something that they love and they keep at it and they become experts, right? Like they get to be really the experts at whatever they're doing. And if you force them to finish something that they don't really love, you're really encouraging that burnout to really happen. So yes, you did mention, so manifestors, they talk about manifestors having a closed aura, which I really despise that phrasing, but that's okay.
I know it sounds so off-putting.
I've also heard it called repelling and magnetic. Like there's two sides to it. So for manifestors, it's like you can't like read a manifestor really, which can be hard for a manifestor. It can be hard to be on the other side of it. You don't know what they're going, which is why we inform, right? That's why we use our voice. And with the generator, the opposite is true. So the generator, I've heard them described like a teddy bear. Like you feel good around them. Like everybody likes you, you can really tell how they're feeling. And so they kind of, everybody has their different auras, which is really why like the strategies are what they are as we're talking about it. It really all makes sense. So for manifestors, you can either repel people. If people come up and they're like, oh, I don't really like what she's talking about, I'm going somewhere else. That's there to protect a manifestor and their energy, because we don't have the energy to really respond to everybody around us, whether, they're right for us or not. And at the same time, there's going to be people who are really magnetized to what you're saying. So I prefer the whole magnetizing and repelling. It has two sides to it rather than just like closed, because that feels really not very nice.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so manifesting generators, that's the next type. These are going to be a combination of a manifestor and a generator. Primarily, they're a generator, so they have that energy, that consistent energy when they're doing things that they love, but they also have a little bit of this manifestor energy where they can actually respond to things around them and then initiate. It's kind of they got both of them. So they're going to feel a combination of satisfaction and peace, right? We're combining the manifestor and the generator when they're in alignment, and then when they're really out of alignment or when they're not following their strategy and authority, they're going to feel like a combination of frustration and anger. And so manifesting generators I've heard referred to as like really like multitaskers. They've got a lot going on. Kylene's husband is a manifesting generator.
Gosh, yes, he cannot stop. He has so much energy. It's like go all the time. Like, and I did hear someone say that manifesting generators out of all the types have the most consistent, most flowing energy. He fits into that category. He is just go all the time. 100% of the time, unless he's sick. And even then it's like, I refuse to be sick too long. I have too much to do.
Yes. So they definitely have that consistent energy. And I know a few manifesting generators, and I can agree to that too. Like they've always got something going on. They're either like have a new idea or they have something else they want to do, or they kind of going. And it's a lot of that, like they're going to take shortcuts if they can to get somewhere faster because they want to do more and they want to get somewhere faster. People will say nowadays that like we're not designed to be multitaskers, but I've heard for manifesting generators, that's not totally true. Like they really, they're just like, they've got a lot going on. If you are a manifesting generator, just know that not everyone moves as fast as you and can handle everything that you can. Just trusting yourself to respond and then initiate, and always using that informing piece that we talked about with the manifestors, because you do have that manifestor part of you, and making sure that if you're feeling any resistance, you're really informing and making sure, first of all, that you have been responding to something and then initiating. So it's kind of, that's the order that they typically go in. If you're married to a manifesting generator, know that they are naturally people who find shortcuts so that they can get more done faster. It's not a reflection of anything other than how they're designed. They need to enjoy what they're doing, just like a generator, and you can follow their lead as they initiate. If that's a struggle, I would encourage you to like dig deeper to figure out what's going on underneath that. There could be tension, like, oh, I don't want to take their lead, and that's kind of true with a manifestor too. If you're married to someone who really has that initiating power and you're really resisting, like, oh, I don't want to follow their lead, like really kind of figure out, look at your charts, like, is there some sort of conflicting, like, is there a manifesting generator? Maybe you need to figure out how, like, which areas each of you wants to lead in, or, having those conversations can be helpful. Anything else to add, Kylene? You are married to a manifesting generator.
I mean, I feel like he's so, like I was mentioning, just so energetic and he gets so much done. But he is, since he's gotten into recovery, he's like a really good communicator too. So I thought that was interesting at the end when you were saying manifestor and manifesting generator both have the initiation, and balancing that, because I think through recovery, as he's kind of stepped into like all of the positive parts of his design and really gotten rid of the stuff that like would have caused anger or frustration, like in that conflict internally, he really resonates with like the good parts of this. And then we I think we would definitely take charge and quote unquote leadership or initiation, like in different aspects of our relationship for sure. And he's always, to his credit, been like really good with my different level of energy. But we do laugh about it a lot because I'm like, I'll be like, listen, I said I'm going to bed, which means like I'm literally heading into the room to like wash my face and place my body in the bed. And like he's off doing like 10 different chores to like get ready for bed. He always has these lists, but it works. It works really well. And we end up, as long as we're communicating, balancing each other pretty nicely.
Yes. And I would just add to that it's not like two types are like good together and other two types are like not good together. It's really about communicating and understanding how, like, that's science of differentiation. How am I different than this person? And can I view their differences as gifts? Like, that's one thing that I love about human design is really seeing, oh, they have these gifts that I don't have consistent access to. And like, how can you use that as like a really positive force to move you forward in your relationship?
Right. And I think even just what you were saying, like some of the things that are literally just rewording something so that it aligns better with them and their energy, and then they receive it better. I think that's huge, huge, huge. And we can use that in so many areas of life.
And even, if you are in that situation where your husband says something and you're just like irritated, you don't even know why. That's one of those things. It's like, just start to dig a little deeper. Like, why am I irritated right now? What is it? Maybe it's something in your human design. Maybe it's like something else going on that's totally unrelated. And so I think human design is a really awesome like doorway. It's like, you can use this as a way to dig in and figure out, is there something in my life, whether it's this conversation or something totally different, that's really not how I want it to be. Okay. We're going to move on to projectors. So projectors are the systems experts. They're like the guides of society. Projectors see people very deeply, and they understand things at a very deep level. So their strategy is to wait for an invitation, because I've heard this metaphor, like if somebody comes up to you and you don't really know them, but they're like, hey, I know your deepest, darkest secrets. Like, let's talk about it. And you'd be like, ooh, like boundary, hello, like, I don't even know you. What's going on? That's how a projector can come across when they don't wait for that invitation versus someone you know really well. And you're like, hey, can you tell me what you see going on in my life? Like, I really would like your input here. That information is going to be received so differently. So if you're a projector, just know that invitation, you can ask for an invitation. You can totally do that. You can say, hey, I see some things. Let me know if you're okay with me sharing them. Okay, you can ask for an invitation. It's not like you're just stuck there waiting for people to invite you to do something. You can ask for it, but just it's kind of a way to smooth the way for you to make sure that that you're going to be able to do what you're here to do. So projectors, they're positive that a signature emotion is success. They're going to feel really successful when they're able to really help people and guide them and really show what they see, or like tell them what they see going on. When they're out of alignment, it's going to be bitterness. It's going to be like, oh, why don't they understand me? So there can be a lot of bitterness with a projector. If you are a projector, just know that you see people at this really deep level, and that not everyone is wanting that perspective at all times, which is why you really have to either ask for that invitation and wait for them to say yes, or just wait to be invited. If you don't wait for that invitation, you may find yourself being rejected and feeling really bitter. And that's one of like the core wounds for projectors is really, they put themselves out there. They're trying to like do something good. And then somebody says, ooh, like, don't do that. We're not ready for that right now. And that can feel really hurtful for I think for anyone, but especially a projector.
I always like that recommendation of communication where someone is sharing their problem and you respond with, do you want me to fix it? Like, do you want advice, or do you just want support? Do you just want me to listen? Right? That might be like a great line for a projector in a marriage.
Definitely. I mean, it can be, I have some ideas when you're ready for them. Like I'm here. just know I'm ready. You have to tell me when, right? It's kind of like if you're having a conversation and you see a doorway open, to really like share all the things that you see, like that the other person is doing that is either like not the way you would do it or whatever. Like that can, if it's in the wrong timing, that can really be, it can do the opposite of what you're trying to do. You're trying to build connection, and really that can like be like, whoa, I wasn't ready for that. So yeah, I love that. I'm here to listen to you when you're ready for advice. I'd love to offer some support in whatever way you need. If you're married to a projector, really invite them in, like take that step to invite them in to share their perspectives, let them guide you towards what they see. Like I said, projectors see things very deeply, and they're here to guide us. Like we need to say, okay, I'm ready. Like, it can be kind of vulnerable, right? Like you can even say, be gentle, like I'm ready, but just like, baby steps. If you know someone like will really, really go deep and you're only ready, you want to invite them in, but you don't want to like, be like, you can use your words in so many different ways with these things. Recognition is big for a projector. They love to they need to know that they're appreciated, and they need to know that they're seen. They need to know that they're valued. And so communicating those things to projectors, and projectors don't have that battery that generators and manifesting generators do. So really allowing that rest as needed. They don't have the cycles necessarily that a manifestor does, but they're just going to need to really tune into their body and know when they need to rest. And so if you're married to a projector, really allowing that to happen and just understanding there's nothing wrong with them. They just need rest right now. So those are my projector thoughts.
Yeah. So I have some very close friends that are projectors. So it's really interesting to kind of just hear this. I mean, you're talking about marriage relationships and communication, but I think that goes to all relationships, right? Just understanding them more deeply. And I loved what you said about them needing to feel appreciated. I think that is so, I mean, it's not like everybody doesn't need that, but I think everybody needs that in a different way, right? Because we're all very specific in how we receive things and how we process things and how we feel things. And I have really noticed that about the projectors in my life. They are deeply feeling people. And do they have like the emotional center? Is that most projectors or no? No? Okay.
Not necessarily.
So they just feel things deeply and they see things in. So for me to be a better friend to these people, to regularly reach out and just let them know how much I appreciate them in my life. That is a huge click for me to make sure that I'm like affirming them.
And especially if it's someone you know closely, if it's a friend, if it's someone you're married to, like whatever it is, you're going to see that in their face, like in their whole body. You say, I just want you to know I really appreciate you. Like I see your value. I see that I see this, what you're doing, and I see that you're guiding me, and I see this. They're going to be like you're going to be able to tell. It's going to make a huge difference. And so it's like positive feedback, right? Like you see what it does to them. You're like, wow, I want to do that again. That made them feel so good. And it was just using some words, right?
Well, I love learning that, because to me that goes, all of this kind of is very similar to like learning somebody's love language. It's really like, how can I communicate to you that I appreciate you, and how can you learn how to communicate to me? And a lot of times when you're thinking about it from a love language perspective, but I'm sure it's the same in human design, we have this natural tendency or like ego to think like, well, everybody's like me. And so what feels good to us, we kind of assume will feel good to everybody. So let me just communicate that way. And that doesn't work because there's so many unique personalities and styles and lives and everything. And so I think it's so important to kind of learn these about people you really care about, because that it does sometimes in our own brain require a little bit of a shift in the words that we use or the type of communication that we use in order to tell somebody that they're valued. And, I think this is like absolutely crucial when you are going through something like recovery from betrayal and addiction, because the communication aspect becomes incredibly important. And then this can help you communicate in a way where you feel seen and heard and valued and appreciated, to begin that rebuilding of trust and consistency in the relationship. And maybe if you're learning this now, create that 2.0 version of your relationship that's better than it was before all of this happened. So I think tools like this are amazing because it allows you to really build up the other person in the specific way that they feel heard and seen, right? So it's like, if I wrote you a note every day. Like Patrick writes me notes every day. It's so cool because it's like words of affirmation and a gift, like all in the same package. It's like, I love it. So it's really sweet, right? I wake up every morning and I have a cup of coffee next to the bed and I have a note on my desk. It's really cool. So like, but if I was maybe something else like quality time, right? Maybe that would not be appreciated by me. I might go, oh, that's so nice, but it might not resonate. Right. So I think kind of understanding these little things about your partner can make a huge difference in making them feel loved.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's awesome about human design is that even if, if you're really struggling and you're going through a betrayal situation, maybe you don't even know what you need. Like you might not even be able to say, here's what I need right now. But if you can look at their human design chart, you see how they're designed. And it's like, well, I'll try this today and we'll see how this lands. I'll try this today. We'll see how this lands. Like you can kind of have, a little umbrella, like, okay, here's some things that I've heard that can be helpful for this type. So I'm going to try them and see. Like that can be like an awesome way to just give different things a try. And you have at least some narrowed down selection based on what type they are. Okay, cool. So one more type is the reflectors. The reflectors are very rare. It's only 1% of the population. And the reflectors are really here to just mirror back what they see. So they're kind of like the quality control of society. So I've heard it's so on your chart, if you're looking at your chart, all those different shapes, triangles and squares and diamonds are called centers. Reflectors have none of them colored in, which we can go into that another time. But what that means is they're really open. They're so open in every aspect of their being to what's happening on the outside of them. They're open to really absorbing other people's fears. They're open to absorbing other people's emotions, and they're open to absorbing other people's ideas and all of this stuff. Okay, so they're open everywhere. And so for a reflector, your strategy is going to be to really wait like a lunar cycle. So a whole month is what is advised in human design. Reflectors are going to feel surprise as their signature emotion, kind of like, wow, this is actually working. Oh my goodness. And they're going to be disappointed when they're out of alignment or when something's not working quite right. So if you're a reflector, know that you are incredibly unique. You're here to mirror back to others what you see in them, what you feel in them, and just show us as a society what you're seeing. So finding an environment that feels good to you is going to allow you to make decisions faster than the whole month, right? Like you can kind of track if you have a decision to make, do I want to do this? Yes or no? Day one, how am I feeling? Your day one, how am I feeling? The more days you have in a row that you're like, yep, this is what I'm doing, the more confident you can be. And the reason is that the moon cycles through all these different phases and energies, and you are absorbing everything around you and the environment and from other people. And so it's kind of harder for you to really know what's mine and what's somebody else's. And that's why it's advised to really wait that time. And so if you're married to a reflector, really giving them that time that they need to make a decision, releasing that pressure on them to be consistent, and know that they're very sensitive people. And there can be beauty in that. I think in our culture, like being sensitive or being inconsistent, those words can kind of have a negative connotation. But I think that it's by your design, right? Like, being inconsistent, there can be value in that. Being consistent, there's value in that. Being sensitive, that can be a really, really helpful thing. So they may be picking up the fears of other people around them. So just making sure like you can monitor your own energy and emotions so that you're not projecting onto them all these fears that they're going to like mirror back to you, right? So that is a reflector. I haven't met a reflector in person yet because, they're so rare. It's only 1% of the population.
Yeah, I haven't either. I always like that manifestors are kind of rare at 9%. I'm like, oh, we're super cool. But we do exist. We're out there. Like I've met manifestors, but no reflectors. I've never met one. So I'm curious if I'll ever kind of run into one and what that, what that will feel like, because I have met and interacted with all of the other types at this point. And so I kind of can resonate with a lot of this. So I would love to meet a reflector. So if you're a reflector, reach out to me. I'd love to get to know you. Let's be friends.
Yes, exactly.
This is so helpful, Megan. I just love this so much. I think it's really cool to learn about all the types, and then also like how do we support them, and how do we understand ourselves and our partner better? And I think that goes so far. And I know that this is just the absolute tip of the iceberg when it comes to human design. So what else is out there? Like what other parts could really, if somebody is resonating with this and going, oh my gosh, like I did not know I was a generator, and that makes so much sense, and how I interact with all my friends and family. And, I have so much more energy than my projector friend and all this kind of stuff. And they want to learn more. Like what is there more?
There's always more with human design. I think I'm in a certification program. I think there's like 500 videos or something.
And
my goodness. I mean, there's just, it goes so deep. So you don't have to take it that deep. I've heard if you just implement your strategy in something called your authority, which would probably be the next layer, but we're not going to talk your ear off too much today. If you can implement those two things, your life is going to shift tremendously. So your authority is really how you're designed to make decisions. And most people these days who aren't really aware of human design or this idea is that they make they make pro-con lists, right? They're like, okay, do I want to do this or this? Here's the good things about that. They really like put it in their head. Like they make it about logic, or like, people think you need to think it over, right? All the phrases we have about making decisions, but really no one is designed to make decisions just by thinking about it. We're actually designed to make decisions according to different parts in our body. And so it's going to feel differently to each person, and each person is going to have a different process to really making decisions, especially big decisions. So that's really, I think, the next part of the puzzle that you really want to understand. So on your chart, it'll say authority, and it'll tell you what your authority is. You can reach out on Instagram if you want to learn more. There's so many people talking about human design these days, so you can even Google it and see what comes up. But I think that's super helpful. And then also just understanding all those centers in your chart. So like I was saying a little bit earlier, they're either going to be colored in, which means defined, which means you have consistent energy coming from that center, or they're going to be white, which is undefined, which means you're going to be really open and you're going to have inconsistent energy there, but you're going to be able to like reflect what's happening around you, and understanding how to really process what's going on around you with those open centers is going to be extremely helpful. So I wanted to share one more thing. If you are looking at your chart, you can, if you're going to have to like, kind of like maybe squint, like just don't pay attention to anything that like you don't, it's like all the numbers, you don't need to know the numbers for what I'm about to tell you. But if you look at your chart, you can, kind of look at the paths. So the lines between the centers are called channels, and just look at those paths. And that's really paths that how your energy is going to flow. So the third one from the top, the square there, that's your throat center. So when we're talking about communication, that's really an important center to really be aware of. Like what energy is coming out from the throat. You might see lines going down to the right, like a whole line. You might see lines going down to the left. You might see them, coming out of that center from any direction, and understanding what are each of those centers, how, like, what kind of energy is there, can really help you trace like what's going to be easy for you to communicate and what's not going to be as natural for you. It doesn't mean you can't, but it means you don't have that consistent flow of energy coming there. So I'll use Kylene in my chart as an example. So Kylene's chart, she has a defined throat, and the center right above that is called the ajna, which is really where your beliefs, your perspectives, how you think about things. So she has a channel there, that line that goes from that center down to her throat. And you can know, since you're on Kylene's podcast, that she's able to communicate her beliefs and her perspectives and how she's thinking about things very clearly. She also has a line down to the right, which is her emotional center. So she has consistent energy coming from her emotional center, how she's processing emotions, up to her throat. So she's able to communicate what emotions are happening, and probably like in the moment. I think you were saying you can do that. Like you just know, right? Not everyone is going to be able to do that. And even knowing that right there, some people are going to be able to just say how they feel very quickly, and some people are not. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So compared to my chart, I do not the only line, like full line that I have from my throat center goes down to the left, which is the splenic center, which is kind of fear and intuition. It's really kind of like a really primal type center. And that center then connects other places. So you can kind of like trace all these different ways. So my spleen then connects down to what's called the root center, which the root center is kind of like adrenaline, like pressure to like kind of move and do things. So for me, how I feel that is like I feel this like pressure to do something. It goes to my spleen, like, is this right for me? Okay, is this, does this feel good? Does this feel safe? Does this feel easy? And then I'm going to be able to talk about it. I'm going to be able to share about it. How do I feel about something? Which is really a cool way to just kind of be able to map out, if you can understand even really high level of the centers, just like starting to pay attention, tune into your body when something's happening. Like, where's this coming from? Is this like a pressure? Is this something that I really want? Is this emotion? Is this intuition? Is this the perspective? I think that can be really helpful too.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's really, really helpful. And I get that all the time, that it's like my thoughts and my beliefs and I can communicate them very clearly. But that's really interesting, I find, because my throat is defined, which means it's very important for me to use my voice and to communicate these things. And what I think is really interesting about this is when we go against that, and how energetically that is so negative for our body and for our physical health. And I've always associated the fact that I had a lump near my throat, that where my cancer developed, that had to do with essentially suppressing using my voice. And so now, in so many ways, on the podcast and in life and in my business and all of these kinds of things, it's essentially like what I do all day, every day is like releasing that energy, right? And but that really, I think, plays an impact in our mental and emotional health over time when we're living in that alignment. If you just think about the emotional piece, when you're living in alignment and you're feeling satisfaction, you're going to have better mental and emotional and physical health. If you are living your life in the anger, the bitterness, or the frustration, that is going to take a toll on your physical health over time. And so learning these, I think, allows you to kind of understand why you're feeling certain ways, and also kind of guides you in the aspect of, oh, well, if I change the way I word some things, or if I change how I interact with people, or I understand how I'm designed, and maybe that means that I would be better serving my energy over here, then you can make those shifts and understand yourself and others better, moving more easily throughout the world and in your relationships.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's so good. Love it.
Well, thank you so much. That was so helpful. I hope all of you had your chart in front of you, so that as she was talking about your specific type, that you could resonate and kind of take some notes about communication. But I know there's so much more to learn. So if you want to follow Megan on Instagram, it's Megan Barrett, Barrett. And if you are interested in continuing learning more about human design, go to redeemingrootscoaching.com/training. And there's a free training that she has created that's super great. And it talks about how to break through fear, doubt, and worry using your unique human design. So it's really another way to look at your chart, see the undefined centers and what comes up for them through them. And, in this podcast, we talk a lot about limiting beliefs and fears and insecurities, and how those really are what you need to address in order to achieve recovery and full and complete healing in your life and to move forward. And what Megan did so well in this training is show it through the lens of human design, what your open centers are, and how the limiting beliefs may be coming through those centers. And of course, using subconscious reprogramming and that type of approach, how you can actually address it. And it doesn't have to take you your whole life to do so. So I would highly encourage that you do that. The link is in the show notes as well. But if you're if this has interested you at all, I highly recommend that you reach out to Megan. Megan, do you also do human design charts for people?
Yeah,
that's
yeah. I have right now I have a 30-minute like chart, kind of go over your chart, and a 60-minute, and that's I think the 60-minute is really, 30-minute would be a pretty brief overview. 60-minute is really going to be a nice kind of overview of your actual like customized chart. Like here's what your chart is, here's what it means. I work really hard to make sure that the language that I'm using is really accessible to everyone. I think if you just Google some human design things, it can get just kind of unavailable to some people if you just don't understand what it's saying. So yes, I do that, and I love incorporating human design like with my coaching clients. And I mean, like I said, my husband and I use this language all the time. He'll be like, I think this is that undefined ego that's like really making, this attaching my worth to whatever. It's like, yeah, I think it really is. And then it gives us an entryway, right? So with my coaching clients, it's like, hey, I see this design and I see that you're not actually living in this way, perhaps. Like Kylene, you are using your voice, but however many years ago, perhaps you weren't. And if you can spot that and say, you have this energy that's like wanting to come out of your throat. And if it's not, they're like our actual problem. Like I have Hashimoto's, my thyroid is, because I was the same way. I was like, oh, I'm the quiet person. I don't talk, but I have that defined throat, which means I need to be speaking and sharing my perspectives or my, for me, it's more my intuition. For you, it's your perspectives and beliefs and your emotions. So I think it's just a really cool tool. Totally changed my life and helped me really just see myself differently and see just the gifts. Like another thing I don't think I mentioned was that all the types are really designed to work together. And it's really cool to just kind of see how, the manifestors can initiate, the generators can respond, the manifesting generators can be doing their thing, the projectors can come along and say, here, let me guide this project. And then the reflectors are there just like, hey, I see this happening. And like, it's really cool to see all the parts and pieces and all the different types come together.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and sharing all this information. I love it. I hope everyone else has found it as helpful as I have. I would highly encourage you to reach out, say hello to Megan, and send her a DM. Thank her for this podcast. It was helpful for you. But thanks so much for being here. Thank you so much for listening. If you found this podcast interesting or helpful, it would mean so much if you leave a 5-star review or post a screenshot and share on social media. We are on a mission to share the message of recovery, and you can help get the word out. If you know a friend who could use this podcast, please share it.